like Sue said, my name is Angelica and I'll be moderating today's webinar. I am so happy to have these three panelists with us today. I know they're going to offer you a lot of great tips, a lot of great advice, and I know that they have accumulated a ton of knowledge, and I'm just so grateful that they're here today to impart that onto you. Now, before I kind of introduce our panelists today, I do want to go over a few key items. Let's see here. So one of the things is we are asking that everyone please stay muted. That way we can really hold on to the words that Cory, Sue, and Oscar have to share today. Also, if you want to turn on your camera, we do encourage that. Obviously, we understand if you can't, you have little ones running around, totally get it. But we love seeing your faces. I love seeing people laugh at my dad's dad jokes or grimace in pain. Either one, I just love seeing your reaction. So go ahead and turn on that camera. The way today's webinar is going to work is we do have some questions that have already been submitted. So we're going to get through those first. And then we're going to have time for Q&A where you guys can go ahead and type in the chat any questions that you have. I do encourage that if you have any comments, any thoughts, while Sue, Cory, and Oscar are sharing their tidbits of wisdom, please feel free to mention them. I know things are a little different on Zoom, obviously, versus in person, where you might give like a clap in person, maybe you just do a little clap in the chat, but we enjoy seeing your guys' reactions, obviously, and comments that you have. Now, with that being said, I would love to introduce our panelists and provide a little bit more information about them, maybe something you didn't already know. So first off, we have Oscar. He's the founder and chief empowerment officer of Aspida Consulting, a Silicon Valley training and consulting firm. He's an introvert turned international speaker. Oscar has given over 400 seminars and trained over 16,000 professionals. His training style is of a prac trainer. He actively practices what he trains others to do. We also have Cory with us. He's the founder of Career Shakers and a Fortune 100 recruiter. He has helped corporate professionals change careers and find their next job. He's spoken on the radio, workshops, technology events, and has a YouTube channel where he posts weekly career content. And then we have Sue with us. Sue Connelly is the founder of the Kit List and president of Connelly Communications. Sue founded the Kit List community of over 72,000 job seekers, employers, and recruiters to help great people find great jobs. And so that's just a little background about Cory, Sue, and Oscar here. And before we really kick things off, and I promise you'll hear more of their voices, I kind of want to lay down the foundation of what we're going to be talking about today. Obviously, you're here to talk about career transitioning, but I think it's important to also kind of get into the mindset of what the current job market is like, what we should be expecting in the big, great world right now. I know, obviously, a year ago, COVID threw things for a whirlwind, and a lot of job seekers are either have been impacted by COVID, will be impacted by COVID due to this, eventual bounce back that will be occurring with the vaccination rollouts and things reopening again. And so with that being said, I want to kind of turn things over to our panelists, and maybe you guys could elaborate more on how do we prepare for this bounce back into normalcy? And what does this mean for us, for those in terms of transitioning careers? So I'll go ahead and hand it over to either Sue, Cory, Oscar, whoever wants to kind of tackle that first and kind of give a high level breakdown of what we'll be talking about today.
Actually, how about if I take off with this one, because the wave thing, I think, that we use for the image is really showing that things are building and we're just getting ready. I'm seeing so many opportunities starting to come through the Kit List. I talked to recruiters, especially the past couple of weeks. Things are starting to move. So I'm like, get on the wave. And, in order to ride a wave, you have to paddle out first, right? And my favorite beach is just over the coast here at Montera, and I watch the surfers all the time. And first of all, no matter what happens, you don't become a great surfer on your first try. So I just want everybody to kind of get in the water, get going. And if you've had a few waves knock you over, just get out and paddle again. And that's kind of my philosophy. So good news is things are really happening. The other good news is that being the work at home kind of model change, it's opened up the entire world for you. So you really have a chance to look at either, going to the next level of your job or go into a different industry or look at a different geography. The world's your oyster at this point. The other thing is it's also humanized everybody. This pandemic has hit each of us, at least in lockdown or having a family member who's been sick or the financial repercussions. So I think we've become more human, and I think there's a better way of our relating to people, and especially as you're reaching out for a job, the other person's been in a similar situation. So in fact, there's some hilarious work from home stories that where kids interrupt, or there's that one yoga instructor who accidentally kicked a mirror and ended up showing her husband walking out of the shower completely buck naked. So I think we've all had this happen at work or something. So we've gotten more real. The second thing is a career transition means really getting personal. Whether you're getting a job in your current industry or something completely different, it really is going to be that personal touch that's going to get you in. With applicant tracking systems and things like that, you want to do an end round around it. So if you haven't been great about keeping your network alive, don't kick yourself. Just go in and just start again, and start out by reaching out to people to see how they're doing, see if you can help them. My whole philosophy is friend working, which is not networking, which is cold and calculating, but be a friend first. And I really think that when you reach out to people and try to, number one, just see how they're doing, this is the perfect reason to call. And then secondly, just kind of find out, what can you do to help them? And then you can turn it to say, hey, I'm really interested in X, Y, and Z company. You're working there. Can you give me some insights there? The other thing too is be sure to thank and follow up with people. I think that we're all reaching out, but I think sometimes in our hustle and bustle to try to, call as many people or reach as many people as we can, really that follow up and just kind of being a friend really is kind of the thing that I think is so important. We'll talk later on about what to do with gaps in your resume, but you get a hall pass right now with COVID. So this is the perfect opportunity for everyone. And we'll also discuss what to do if there's a longer gap. And so, and actually, there again, what I would just say, kind of be unapologetic and just know that, from what I've heard from other recruiters, you need to explain the gap, but call it a personal sabbatical, professional sabbatical, and then list the things that you did. And actually, you're using skills and things like flexibility and creative problem solving and dealing with life and death situations that actually are really good core competencies that companies really want, as we find kind of that emotional intelligence and wisdom is kind of lacking, even though people are so educated and qualified right now. So, and also I want to reassure you, one of the recruiters I spoke to, she goes, I don't care where they were. I just want to know they're ready to kick ass. So let's do it. Get in and start paddling, guys. And we'll give you some other tips of some practical things to do. But it always boils down to really making a personal connection. And then once you make that connection, to nurture it and take good care of it and be giving about it. And then when you do that, you think about a job or something like that, it's always your professional skills plus that chemistry. So be your authentic self, be real, and and have some fun with it as well. So I'll kick it on to Oscar. Is that your turn now?
Actually, Cory.
Oh, Cory, there you go.
Perfect. Thanks, Sue. So in my quick little 5-minute section, just to give everybody some value right off the bat. Oh man, my voice. I gotta get some water here. Much better. Okay, so now when it comes to career changes or career transitions, one of the very common questions that I get asked all the time is like, what do I do with my resume if I'm applying for a job when I'm doing a career switch? How do I stand out, even if I don't necessarily have the specific job title that they're looking for or all of the 100% of the job description? So what I recommend to all of my clients is there's 3 main areas that you're going to want to make sure you're customizing and focusing on. So the first one is going to be your summary section. I know a lot of people are focusing a lot on cover letters, especially when doing career changes. I think the misconception is that recruiters, hiring managers will take the time to read 1 to 2 page cover letters. Unfortunately, most of the time we do not. And so instead, I would give yourself a small summary section at the top of your resume. Usually, I don't recommend summary sections if you're doing like a general job switch, like you're in finance and applying for another equal job in finance at another company. You don't really need a summary section. But if you're doing a career switch, I highly recommend you leverage that summary section to talk about your transferable skills, why you're potentially qualified, and why you may be looking to change careers or change industries, etc. That way the hiring manager can read that right off of the bat. The second thing you're going to want to utilize is the skills and technology section. Most people usually put it right under the summary, which is fine because most people read top to bottom. That's kind of how you want the reader to view your skill set. So in that skills and technology section, make sure you're ordering your skills that are directly relevant for the job that you're applying for, especially highlighting all of your transferable skills, right? So let's say you're switching from finance to marketing. The data and analytics side of things is going to be very, very helpful, like your Excel skills, your data visualization skills, your analysis skills, planning and budgeting. Those are all going to be super helpful that you're going to want to put at the very front or at the very top of your skills list. Similarly, if there's any technologies or coding languages that have overlap, you're going to want to highlight those as well. And then for the last thing that I really encourage everybody to do is I would I would shy away from using functional resumes. If you go on Google and you search like best resumes for career changes or career transitions, many websites, blogs, etc. will encourage you to use a functional resume because that's what it was quote unquote designed to do. But I think one of the pieces that they don't talk about is that recruiters hate the functional resume. The reason being is we have no idea where you work, what your current job title is, and it's kind of a red flag for us if you use the functional resume because it kind of makes it seem like you're hiding something. I know Oscar and Sue and I were talking about that too. So it's definitely a common perception. So what I would recommend instead, if you are doing a career switch, is use the regular chronological resume format, but do a blend with the functional. And by doing that, that's writing your bullets as normal, but then leveraging like bold or underline to really draw the reader's attention to your transferable skill sets or accomplishments that are relevant for the job that you're applying for. Or what one of my other clients has done is they've actually started each bullet point with a skill set, like bolded it in the front and then gave their example to follow afterwards, of course, having the result. But that's like a nice kind of hybrid approach where it's still chronological because recruiters care about who you work for, what your current job title is, and obviously what you're doing. And so this kind of gives you the best of both worlds. So those are like my 3 quick tips for folks who are looking to change careers with your resume.
Awesome. Thank you, Cory. Those are great, great tips. You're hearing it directly from the recruiter's mouth, literally. But thank you, Sue, also as well for just the great input there. And you're right, things are starting to turn around in the market. So for me, one of my areas of focus in terms of training is helping professionals with their LinkedIn profile, professional brand, networking. But a little bit about my background. I've actually have transitioned careers 11 times. I have been in the workforce now for just under 30 years. So that means almost every 2.5 years, on average, I've transitioned careers. And so I have a lot of experience, and that's where I'm going to come to you from practical experience, things that I've done. 3 things too that I highly, highly encourage all of you to focus on doing. Number 1 is making sure that you establish and promote your professional brand. And really what your professional brand is, when people think of you, of your name, or you have a phone call, or people, come across your LinkedIn profile, what is that impression that you want to give people and also leave people with? Because we have a short attention span memory and we forget. But what is it that you want people to remember you for? So that, for example, when the Corys of the world or the Sues of the world, we have a conversation and they're like, hey, Oscar, you know what, so-and-so, or I'm looking for this, a software developer. You want to be top of mind. Number two is that you want to always be building and nourishing relationships. And like to Sue's point, oftentimes, and I'm guilty of this, I've done this, where I lose track of people, I lose contact. But can I tell you something, folks? Once you get a job, don't stop nourishing those relationships, because I'm going to tell you something, okay? You're going to lose that job or you're going to hate it, okay? Some of us, don't want to retire at 62. Some of us want to work until 102 years old, like Sister Jean or Jan, the basketball motivator, for I forget what basketball team she is. She's out there still at 100 plus, kicking it and bouncing around, okay? Motivating people. And the third thing that I encourage you to do is to share your expertise online. How? It could be content that you share, create. I talk about this oftentimes. When I was in second grade, we had show and tell days where we would bring a toy, our favorite toy, stand in front of the class, and I would be like, hi, everyone, this is my yellow Tonka truck. You see it? This is what I do with it, okay? And then all of a sudden we get to be adults, and all we do is tell the world on a resume, tell the world on a LinkedIn profile how amazing we are. What happened to the show? Show and tell, folks, okay? So those are three things that I would encourage all of you to do. Angelica, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. There you have it, folks, from the experts themselves. Before I continue with our questions here, I'm going to go ahead and enter into the chat another time. We have a Google form here. We really believe in using these webinars to help others connect and expand their network, where in other times you might be attending a mixer or a networking event and actually getting people's business cards. We have this form. We have this Google form. So go ahead and feel free to complete that. And if you just click on it, it'll lead you right to the Google form. And then I also have, and this is just to get to know more about everyone here on this webinar. And can you see this poll right now?
Yes.
Yes, awesome. So we have just a few questions here, and we would love to receive your feedback just so we know a little bit more about everyone that's joining us, and so we can really maximize the information that we provide you today. So if you want to go ahead, I'll just give it a couple seconds here. Our first question is, where are you in your career transition? So I'm going to go ahead and give that a second. Give it about 10 more seconds. And Oscar, by chance, are you seeing the results of this?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Just making sure. Let's see here. Dana, not a career transition necessarily, but definitely hoping to change industries. Good to know. Thank you, Dana. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. We do appreciate that information. We know everyone's here for a specific reason, and that everyone's background may differ. So definitely something we are keeping in mind. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll here. Hopefully, does it? Okay, well, it's not letting me know quite what you guys, let's see here. Oh no, we have a little error.
Yeah, I see it now.
Are we seeing the results?
Yes.
You want to go ahead and yell them out to the class?
Yeah, so we
see them.
So it says 56% responded that they are actively looking, 36% are considering a change, and 8% are in my camp. I'm not sure why I'm on this webinar. No, I'm kidding. I'm not sure. So obviously 56% actively looking, 36% considering a change, and 8% not sure.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's go ahead and launch the second poll. I promise we'll be quicker here. There we go.
All right.
Where are you? This is another important thing, so we know just exactly. Know we might have some young professionals out here who you guys will obviously be in a different boat than someone who's been in the workforce for 20 plus years. So definitely something to keep in mind.
And senior does not mean senior citizen.
No, no. apologize. Should have clarified that. Yes. No, nothing. Awesome. Give it about 8 more seconds here. Marianne, it better not. Hot. Nope. Okay. And then we'll go ahead and
Okay. Yeah, so here it says, where are your career? 4% are starting off, 38% are mid-level, 48% are senior, and 10% executive. So obviously we have 86% of you are in the mid-level to senior level category. Thank you.
Yeah.
And 100% of you are amazing.
Yes.
And then we have this last question here. And now I know obviously we've all been impacted by COVID in different ways. This question specifically asking in what way career-wise you've been affected. I know that some of us have had to return to the workforce after perhaps raising a family, taking care of family members, and has forced us financially to return to the workforce. Other of us have had to maybe even step down from a position because it's been closed and we've had to take perhaps a lower level. Or some of us have changed industries, whatever the circumstance may be. We're just asking to get a little bit more background here.
No.
Obviously, there's other options as well. So we're going to go ahead and give that 2 more seconds here. Awesome. And then our results.
Okay. All right, so we have here 33% lost job or laid off, 6% left job, 5% changed industries, 6% returned to workforce after 1+ gap year, 3% stepped down from previous position, and then actually 54% other.
Actually, can you guys throw a few things in chat to clarify what other means?
My guess is they were not affected by COVID in their role. That would be my guess. Yeah, no change, not affected.
Okay, got it.
Okay, good.
Mind reader, Cory. Like, oh, we don't know.
Gotcha.
Okay, awesome. Thank you everyone for your patience in that, and that definitely helps us as we continue to ask these questions. So let's get to the meat of it already. Now, I'm gonna ask our panelists to go ahead and answer these questions in whatever way they see fit. I know that some of them may be more in your ballpark compared to others, but one of the questions I want to ask right off is, and specifically, as we can see, a lot of people have had different career experiences in the last year, perhaps even more so than any other year, decade, century. And so I want to go ahead and start this off on, now this is a question that we get many times, and especially for those career transitioning. How do I explain my change in an interview? How do I turn it into an advantage or unique selling proposition? So I'll go ahead and also let our panelists interpret these questions as they will. I believe that also gives us an interesting point of view because obviously everyone has different ways of approaching this. So I'm going to go ahead and let you guys take the floor.
Cory, maybe this is a good one since you're the recruiter.
Yeah, so I think one thing that I would love to clarify for everybody is that getting the interview is actually the hardest part when you are changing careers, because on paper, when you're applying online through the job portals and the ATS systems, it is a little difficult, especially if your immediate job title does not match the current job title that you're applying for. So if you are given these opportunities to interview, that's actually a really, really good sign, and you want to really leverage those, because not many, you may not get very many chances, right? So make sure you're coming well prepared for your interviews. How you can actually leverage your experience is, number one, you should know that with this context that I've already shared, they know that you necessarily don't match 100% of the job description, but they still want to talk to you anyways. So they are aware of your transferable skill set and know that you can bring something unique and different to the team. But you also need to be able to do the minimum qualifications for the role and complete the responsibilities and duties outlined in that job description. So what you're going to want to do is, number one, address right off the bat that you are doing a career change and you may not have 100% of the direct experience that they're looking for. However, What you do come to the table with is number one, transferable skills, but number two is a different type of perspective. And that could either be from changing industries or from, maybe like you have a finance lens looking at sales or marketing or vice versa, right? Sometimes really great hires actually come from within the client group in which they service or the customers in which they work very closely with, right? Because it's you're closest to the problem or you're closest to the product, and so as a result of that, you sometimes can make a really great career change. So I would number one focus on those things, and then the second thing you're going to want to do is show your excitement not only for the company but also for the role itself. That actually these days is a huge differentiating factor for a lot of folks, or for a lot of hiring managers, I should say. Like if I was given the choice between hiring somebody who on paper is super qualified for a role, but they don't really seem that excited about this job or this company or this team itself or this product, and they seem like they're bored or they're not interested, but you come in with all of this fantastic energy. One of the advantages of people who are changing careers is that I know that if I hire you, you're going to love this job most of the time, like 95% of the time, because you wouldn't have wanted to change careers and give up everything that you had if you weren't really excited about this opportunity. So I would leverage both of those things to your advantage.
Thank you, Cory. I really appreciate that. Sue, was there something you
Well,
wanted to?
yeah, I have some tips and also a caution. One of the things I know is can really tick off people once you go into a company is having that third party, objective opinion is really, really great, but don't say, oh, at X company we did X, or Y company we did Y. That it sounds kind of patronizing sometimes, especially if it's a hot company from another industry. So I always just say, when you suggest something, always use the phrase, how about, say, how about, da, 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 da. We found that blah, 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 it was effective on this particular situation, but just don't throw company names around, because it is one sure way to really kind of tick off your team. The other thing too about getting someone to want to hire you is that you might want to remind them, because I think some people get married to the idea of this long, long laundry list of really basically a unicorn. It doesn't exist in a single human being. But I think also making that hiring manager or recruiter realize that, say, remember when you took on a role and you didn't have all the skills already baked yet, but you had that passion for it, that thirst for learning, that willingness to jump in and do everything. I think that's kind of a key that people want. And also, if you're more senior, you've got the network. So if you haven't had your hands on some specific thing in the past, you sure know someone who is. And so I would leverage your kind of that whole intellectual body of information and expertise that you can tap into in a moment's notice. I've done that plenty of times where people call and say, hey, I need someone who's a great, AR specialist, or someone who can do, data mining and AI deep level practices. It's a referral network. So that's part of what it is too. But I think showing that, reminding them that they didn't necessarily know everything when they got into their job too, and that you have that ability, aren't afraid to really try anything. And then also the other thing is always show the value you brought in another example of another company, because really it's not just skill set, it's value. And I think that if you can quantify it or give an example, tell a quick story, that's really going to help kind of cement it in their minds that you are someone they want.
Thank you, Sue. If anything, I am a huge fan of that template that you kind of gave out. How about, instead of the patronizing way? So thank
Oh, well,
you
you
for
can
that.
use it in difficult situations or
Yeah,
family. How about is much easier than you should do blah or whatever.
That would have avoided me a lot of family scuffles. Thank you. Everyone who is typing in the chat right now, I know there's a lot of questions that you guys have given. I see them. Please know I do see them, and I'm keeping track of them to make sure we get to them at the next portion of our webinar. So yes, I see you guys. I want to go ahead and move on to a different question here, where I think Oscar, why don't you start off with the kind of tip this over to you on, and this is more for, I know there obviously, as we saw in the poll, there are different reasons that some of you may be career transitioning, re-entering the job market, etc. How to navigate career pitfalls. And I know that's a very broad statement. And so I want to kind of tie it down a little bit more. And I want to get at gaps in work specifically. Now, those gaps could be towards something that is specifically COVID related, or obviously also we get a lot of parents who took a couple years off to raise their families, to take care of their parents. And so why don't you, Oscar, if you could take that over and kind of what should these individuals do to explain
Yeah,
these gaps?
yeah, that's a good, yeah, that does happen quite frequently for various reasons. And so there's several things, advice that I would give. So one is, from a LinkedIn standpoint, your about section on LinkedIn, that is the place where you tell your story. And what I mean by telling your story, it's basically, number one, talk about your personality traits, talk about your career journey. And in this case, you can talk about, I did this is why I did it, this is where I'm at today, and this is where I want to go, what I want to do in the future. That's kind of, basically the structure that you can do it in your about section. The other thing is that once you are in a position where you can do some work, if you're not sick anymore, obviously, or if your children might be at an age where you can start devoting some time to volunteer work or taking on some projects. Look at doing that. Look at doing some volunteer work, and be strategic at the type of volunteer work. For example, if you are a software developer or you know something about web design, maybe you volunteer your skill sets for a nonprofit to help them revamp their website. And not only do you keep your skills abreast, but now you can actually potentially use or ask that executive director to write a recommendation for you on LinkedIn. And you also can use that experience as a story, as an example during the interview process. So those are some ways where you can continue to stay relevant and fill some of those gaps. Because I joke around about this, and I think Cory might have mentioned this, or maybe it was Sue, but employees want to know that you just weren't sitting at home eating bonbons, and like in my case, put on 25 pounds, COVID, not 15, okay? So they want to know that you have been productive. There is absolutely nothing wrong with taking some time off. And the last thing too that I want to tell you folks, not every company is going to give you the opportunity to tell your story or be willing to accept that. And you know what? Take your ball and bat and go play it on another ball field. Because Oscar Garcia doesn't need 10 opportunities. I need the right opportunity that matches who I am, values what I bring to the party, and that I value that company too. It's a two-way street, folks.
I'd like to add to that too. It's super, super important that you're absolutely authentic on your resume. You do need to explain gaps, but again, that's where you want to turn it into a positive. And Cory gave some really good points on that. But then also on LinkedIn, I think that's really important to be active on LinkedIn, because the more you engage and the more you do more than just like someone's post, write a comment, share an article, get out there, because it's going to give you visibility that's unique any place else. Because unlike other social media forums, this is positive, it's professional, and it's really powerful. The second thing I think that's really important for people to do is, keep growing, keep learning. So if you have some time off, you can join professional organizations and get to know other people in the area that you want to be in, or the one that you're currently in, and forge those relationships. And I tell people, don't do like pop into a million organizations and never show up. Choose a few strategically and then really become a part of it. Go each month to those organizational meetings. Sometimes you can sign up to be on a committee or head up a committee. As a consultant, having my own business, I found women in consulting to be a remarkably generous and informative group, where I have deep friendships that came from that, but also we all helped each other learn how to run our businesses, because we know to do the work that we do, but learning all the other things that are with it. So choose a few and then get in and be a part of it on a regular basis. The other thing is emphasize any kind of online training that you've done. There are plenty of classes to take. At Stanford, they've got continuing education. Use that because you're showing that you're not only learning new things and being tenacious about it, but then you're also going to meet other classmates. And again, it gets back to relationships. You're widening your circles, but get involved in LinkedIn, really. And Oscar's the expert. Read and watch everything that he posts. But really, that's your best venue, and then use that to reach out personally to people. And the other thing too, I think is really important is, we all talked about doing informational interviews when we're all fresh out of college. I would just reclassify that as just having a moment with someone where you'll reach out and say, hey, may I have 5 to 10 minutes of your time to get your insights on this industry? I'm thinking of transitioning, or I'm looking at this company, if you're still staying in the same path. So again, personal touch, build the relationships. Don't punish yourself if you haven't been doing it. Don't be apologetic about emerging, after a long period of time. A lot of people have been kind of in hibernation mode, but focus on them and just get going. Just do it.
Yes, thank you, Sue and Oscar. Especially, I think it completely resonates with people that, taking advantage of, you have been doing something, whether you think so or not. And while you haven't been in the workforce, there is something that you've been doing, and there is a way where you can frame it so that it benefits you and the job that you're seeking. So thank you everyone for that. And especially selling your vision. I think that's also very important. That's essentially, I'm seeing a kind of a pattern here, but yeah, selling that vision and where you want to go and how you will be a great employee and be able to contribute in a way that will lead this company in further. So thank you both of you. And I'm also thank you everyone who's submitting their questions. There's a lot of great ones here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ask one more of our kind of questions that were submitted beforehand here, and then I'll get to all your questions because you guys have some really great questions here, and I want to get to you guys. So we're going to go ahead and go with one more question here. Let's see. Now, I have one that is how to land an opportunity. We get this question a lot too. How to land an opportunity and or talk to decision makers without needing to go through a recruiter or ATS. Now, I'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and let you guys deck out who's going to answer that one.
Let me start it off here. Okay, so the question, basically what we want to know is, how can we avoid talking to the Corys of the world?
Yeah, you don't want to talk to Cory. You don't want to talk to Cory.
No, folks, so again, I tell you this from personal experience. So I used to, when I would do in-person presentations, I remember back with Cheryl Lee at the library, awesome friend of all of ours. And this was when the economy was really hot and it was a job seeker market. And people would come up to me, especially software developers, and I'm like, oh yeah, Oscar, I had 6 or 7 recruiters contact me this week, and I just kind of turned them down. And for me, my business, aside from the training, the other part of my business is consulting work, which means that I take on short-term projects. And also what that means is that I'm looking for work every month, every 3 months, et cetera, and so forth. And I was starting to take a hit on my self-image because I'm like, I never have recruiters reach out to me. What's wrong with me? Is the things that I'm teaching people not working? And then all of a sudden I came to my senses and I'm like, wait a minute. I am talking to the hiring managers. I am talking to the executives of these companies who hire the Corys of the world, who tell the Corys of the world who they need to. So therefore, forget Corys of the world. I know how to talk to the decision makers. And the way to talk is part of it, to go back to what Sue said, is you need to be active online. I don't care if it's LinkedIn. Go find Clubhouse. That's the latest social media app that a lot of professionals are on. Quit posting pictures of what you had for lunch. Instead, post an infographic of the work that you do, folks. I use social media to highlight my expertise, to stay top of mind. You go onto LinkedIn, I am in your face, adding value, showing my expertise. Therefore, these executives, these decision makers, they're like, I need to contact Oscar. That is how you reach to these people out there. It's really simple, folks. The information that we share is very simple. The hard part is applying the information.
Excellent, Oscar. And part of what I think is also really important is, do you have the 1 or 2 sentence description of what you do, so that, which has value, like how do you add value to companies that you work with, that anyone in your circle will go, oh, yeah, Oscar's the one to go to when you really want to know how to make meaningful connections and to be able to build your network and, things like that. I mean, he does way more things, but you choose like the one thing you're going to hang your hat on, and then make sure that people like your own family, your relatives, your neighbors know what you do, because your personal network is going to be the strongest one to begin with. And there's your kind of the tight circle, I always call it like the, the solar system, right? And the people who are kind of like Mercury or like your family, rotate, you're the sun in this little solar system. But then beyond that, you've got people you've worked with, people you have done other things with, church stuff, volunteer stuff, sports stuff. Then there are people that even beyond that. And, really, I swear we are probably only about 3 degrees of separation to everybody in the entire world. And this is good news for the good guys and bad news for the bad guys. So it all, that's why I always tell people, leave happy trails when you leave a company, never speak ill of anyone. And really, by doing good things and being good to other people will think about you. But make sure you've got, that little synopsis of like, what's that, can someone say that you do in, in your workspace, that they can just go like, oh yeah. And then also let people know that you're interested in something else, because a lot of times they don't make the connection. And part of what I have heard time and time again is be specific. For instance, I do marketing consulting, to high-tech companies, but I need to be more specific than that. And so, saying, I'm just going to make this up, but, I want to be able to teach rocket scientists how to, have that first, not only just get to Mars, but, get to Jupiter, that kind of a thing. So get more specific so people know, and then just spread the word in a way. But remember, when you spread the word, always ask what you can do to help them. That's the key thing.
And then I think the follow-up question that usually comes after this is like, how do I connect with really high-powered executives who may or may not know me? And I'm gonna have a YouTube video come out probably next week on like the best cold emails to send to people and a template. But basically, you're gonna wanna make it very, very easy for them. So be proactive, give them your number in advance, tell them opportunities or times and days in which you're free, give them at least 3 different days, have one of them be an all day option. So typically make that like a weekend for you, like a Saturday or a Sunday, and then try and get a referral. So you're gonna need to. It's kind of like one of those puzzles where like you have to put one piece together just to like put the second piece together. So depending on how powerful or how high level of an executive or a person that it is, I wouldn't go directly to them right off the bat. I would try and get a referral or first get connected with somebody that they know and trust or love, and then have them refer you into that person. So that's how I actually got my first job out of undergrad into management consulting. I knew that I needed to get a partner to kind of approve my ability to interview because I didn't go to like an Ivy League school. And so instead of just going directly to the partner, what I did was I started with like an associate, and then I made friends with him, and then I had him refer me to his boss, and then I impressed his boss, then his boss, et cetera, et cetera. So it took me like 3 or 4 conversations, but then eventually I got a work endorsed referral from somebody that the partner trusted, and then I was able to get the partner on the phone. I don't think I would have had that success if I had just gone straight to them. So that's the other element of it.
And also do your homework. In all these notes, first of all, never, 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 never send a LinkedIn invitation without using that opportunity to write a personal note to someone, because I will not accept it. And I know a lot of other people won't either. And show you've taken the time to either make something relevant to them about what, so then do your research. When you send a note to someone, find out, LinkedIn gives you a whole bunch more information. Googling does all kinds more information, but show that you've taken the time to get to know what that person's about. You don't have to cyber stalk them to show that there's some relevance to that. You care enough to find out more about them and say, I would really appreciate just 5 minutes of your time. That's what Cory said, make it an easy ask. You don't want to make it a big thing. Just say 5 to 10 minutes of your time. And then in that actual interview, have a timer and say, hey, I just realized we're at the 10-minute mark. I want to respect your time. And if they say, oh, yeah, I can spend more time, that's great. But you've shown that you have the courtesy about what they're giving you. And remember, people's time is a very important commodity now more than ever. And so you want to be respectful, you want to be thankful, and you want to follow up. And even after writing a quick thank you note to someone, do it by email. If you somehow get an address, write a handwritten note as a follow-up, and then let them know 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks down the line. If you got the job, if you got another interview, let them know, because that will help encourage them to help the next person.
I want to share really quickly something here. And you guys, you're welcome to take a screenshot of this. David Quevedo is the Vice President of Global HR Services at VMware. Hello, like the top dog, okay? I was on LinkedIn one day, 11 o'clock plus at night, and looking through my feed, while most of you were on Facebook, I was on LinkedIn, okay? And I came across an article that someone in my network shared about him. And I looked him up, and this is the exact message I sent. Hi, David, I just read your story, inspiring. My parents were migrant workers, and I can relate to your story. I welcome the opportunity to connect with you. Within 5 minutes of sending my message, he accepted it. Find something in common, folks. That's to Sue's point. Get active out there, okay? Be strategic. Because guess what? Now we're connected on LinkedIn. I see his post. He sees my post. I can message him directly. I have the free version of LinkedIn, and I can message this homeboy here, David. Okay. So there's an example, folks. Some of you are like me, need to see something visual, a template. There it is.
And also, I just want to say, Oscar says he's an introvert, and I'm kind of in the middle. People might think I'm an extrovert, but I have to give myself a kick in the butt pretty regularly. So just know that it's hard for all of us to go to an event where we don't know anybody, or to join something where you don't have, a backup friend or something. But just know most people are uncomfortable, but if you don't dare, if you don't try, you're not going to meet anybody. And I went to one dinner that I didn't know a single soul, but I walked in with someone. She ended up becoming a friend for life. And you just don't know. So take that risk and know that chances are most of the other people are feeling uncomfortable too. So don't let that stop you. Shyness is okay, only don't let it hinder you.
Thank you, Sue, Cory, and Oscar. I know that all our participants here are really appreciating the great nuggets of wisdom you're offering. And I also have, I think it's brought forth a whole slew of questions as well. People are eager to pick apart your brains and have you, be their life coaches. So we're going to go ahead and get into some of the questions that have been submitted here. I have a question here from John, who actually emailed his question in beforehand. John, I believe I saw you on here. Hello. He commented here saying, I would appreciate your sharing some ideas on reaching out to people via LinkedIn or through email. New people and those slightly known, such as fellow school alumni. Could you give examples of a cover note, emails, content, and subject line?
Yeah, I can give you some. So, folks, as an introvert myself, I prefer warm introductions or find some common ground. Like I did the example that I just shared with you with David. Start with your alumni. And LinkedIn has a really great feature. If you go to your school's LinkedIn page, there is a section that says alumni. You can actually do a search for alumni that live in a particular geographic region, graduated from a certain year or years from college, what type of company or the name of the company they're working for, what they majored in. I mean, I was a history major, Chicano studies major, okay, at Berkeley. So I could go there and find other Chicano studies majors. It doesn't matter what year they graduated. And that would be my common message to them. Oh my gosh, you majored in Chicano studies, so did I. Oh, do you know Professor? We'll love to connect with you on LinkedIn. Now, nothing is 100%, folks, but it does increase the chances, to Sue's point of personalizing. I did see a note from someone here that said that on the mobile app, you can't personalize it. You can. Go to the person's profile, click on the gray box that says more, and then a window pops up, and that's where you personalize it. So those are some recommendations.
Also, since we're inundated with email, if you don't hear back from someone with an email message, follow up in about a week and a half or something like that, and just say, hey, we'd really love to chat with you. Just change what you say, but we're getting bombarded. So LinkedIn, actually, I don't get to a lot of invitations until much later. Since I'll catch up later on. So that's the tough thing is that just give some people some grace that they might not get to it. So email, the LinkedIn message will always stay there for the invitation, but the email follow up in a week and a half.
Awesome, thank you. I have another question here from Marianne. What are the specific indicators that show the job market picking up? Any stats or anecdotal specific markets, more job postings? I'm asking you all to look into your crystal ball and let us know.
So from just a job trends perspective, I think it's more industry specific than timing specific. COVID has been unfortunate for quite a few different industries, but at the same time, a lot of industries have thrived during this pandemic. It just depends on where you're looking and what types of jobs that you have. Now, unfortunately, some folks may have industry specific jobs, right? Like if you work in manufacturing or CPG, your job may be specific to that, which is less fungible in other non-CPG or manufacturing companies. And in those cases, then you would be hopefully taking all of our great advice here and considering maybe doing a bit of a career change. But for folks who are, let's say, doing accounting for a CPG company and your company, laid you off, it didn't do very well, it couldn't survive during COVID, but industries like, biotech, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, anything in technology honestly has done quite well during tech. All e-commerce based companies, any shipping and logistics companies, they've all done very, very well. And if you have a fungible skill set like marketing, finance, accounting, legal, HR, etc., just being able to explain how your industry experience and knowledge is still transferable across industries will actually be extremely helpful for you. But I would say focus more on the industries themselves as opposed to like timing. Like some people ask me all the time, like, Cory, what month of 2021 do you think there's going to be the most jobs open? And I was like, every month. Every month has the most job openings compared to last month. And so I would say focus more on industries rather than timing.
Well, and also on the timing part, as Cory said, every month is a good month. I talk to recruiters regularly, and before I have, webinars like this, I go and I talk to a whole bunch of them. And, I've heard time and time again that people really miss the boat in December because January is one of the highest hiring months. I mean, typically January is one of the highest hiring months, which means like, the whole thing analogy about, being able to ride the wave, you've got to get your wetsuit on, get the board, you've got to paddle out and to be able to catch the wave, right? So it really means that you just don't really let up. And I know that some people feel like when they're looking for a job, it's got to be a 40-hour a week kind of endeavor. And don't do that. I just say be really, really focused. Choose a few things that you think you're going to get the highest amount of results and focus on that. And then give yourself some time to relax, recharge, and then also do some other things. I think that's really key.
Hey,
Awesome.
and Angelica, do you think we can do, I believe it was Sandra. I'm trying to scroll up in the chat. I left Sandra's question on purpose because I thought that it'd be great for all three of us to kind of talk about our
Yes.
perspectives on it.
Did it have to do with transitioning and switching?
Yes, it was
Yes, I have it right here. Go ahead.
choosing the right job, I believe is what her question was about.
Yes, I believe so. Here, I'm going to go ahead and read it. It says, this is from Sandra. When transitioning / switching, what is the best way to find jobs that may be a match for your transferable skills? There are job titles one may not be familiar with.
Yes, and so I was salivating actually when I saw that question. I didn't want to type it all up
Yeah.
in the chat, and I'd love to hear Oscar and Sue's opinion on this. But I think this is where sometimes getting a career transition coach can be extremely helpful, because a lot of the times the pitfall that I see with my clients is everybody wants to make the immediate next jump in in their career change, and depending on how drastic that change is, it's not always doable in one move, right? Sometimes you have to play chess rather than checkers. So for example, like let's say I work in accounting and I want to do brand-based marketing, events and brand marketing. There's very little unfortunate skill overlap between
Mm.
both of those roles. So even though that's my dream job, Cory, I want to do events and branding for large technology companies, etc. You usually can't do that jump all in one move. But instead, I would say you could probably do it in two moves. So maybe instead you take like a finance program manager role that supports the marketing or branding team within your company. I would do that for like a year and a half, 2 years, crush it, network extremely well, maybe even do like some additional 20% side projects, helping out the marketing team or branding team, working extra on top of your day job. I know everyone's going to be mad at me like, Cory, I work so much. Well, if this is your dream job and you don't want to go back to school, maybe you work a little bit extra for a month or two, get some experience, show people that you are kick ass at marketing, even though you have a finance background, and then leverage that opportunity to then transition full time into like a marketing or branding role. That's how some of my clients have done it. It's not as sexy and it's not as like cool and fast as you hear about on YouTube videos and things like that, but that's realistically how I would go about doing it. But I'd love to hear Oscar and Sue's opinion.
Yeah, you know what I'm hearing, what I just heard, part of what I heard you say, Cory, which I love, is folks, we have to reframe how we look at the word career, because most of us, I'm going to be 52 here next week, okay? And I still part of that generation, like the baby boomers, that many of us think that we work at the same company and maybe climb the ladder within the company, et cetera, and so forth. And that becomes our career. And then we retire. And in my case, that wasn't my journey. Folks, I sold women's hosiery. I was a retail manager. I did sales and finance. I sold cars. I sold $1 million software packages. I started a nonprofit. I was a chamber CEO. I did community relations work at LinkedIn. And I started my business. You think like all these ingredients don't match. But here's the thing is that I've learned to take, to Cory's point, right, some of those transferable skills and bring them together. And I actually manage my career, not a job. And that's, I think, where many of us need to like switch that mindset. Stop thinking about working at ABC company or doing ABC job. No, skill sets, folks, skill sets. Focus on those things.
And that's really where you're in charge of your brand, right? Because when they're hiring someone, they really are hiring you, not a list of skills, not a bunch of relationships. So what you really want to make sure that you're focusing on is do the things you love, do some of the things you don't love. Another thing I think is really important is that people who have that kind of attitude of, oh, it's not my job, not my role, those are the people that really get sidelined very fast. And I think just having that kind of tenacity, no matter what your level is, sometimes as an executive, you need to be able to empower people to try to step in and do and try new things. But I think that I want to be a continual learner my entire life. And some of the things that are completely my hobbies and my nonprofit stuff that I do, they all overlap certain things that, as Oscar was saying, all these things kind of put together this really wonderful mosaic. That's who you are specifically, and no one else can match it. So I think that, they say that you've got to be your own advocate in your career. I think everyone knows, that there is no loyalty to you by companies. So you really have to, give a company a certain amount of loyalty, just because you're committed, but that doesn't extend to, longer than, a year, 2 years, that kind of a thing. There's a lot more. But when companies stopped being loyal to their employees who were lifers, I think, their kids saw what happened to their parents who got kind of cashiered out in their late 40s, early 50s and had a tough time finding a job. I think it also taught a lesson to a lot of other people saying, hey, you know what, if the loyalty doesn't go both ways, I'm a free agent. So I think really look at you being in charge of your own ship, and you determine like where you want to go, and you're going to hit some shoals and you're going to hit some bad weather. You're going to hit some areas where there's no wind, but know that you're on a passage. And each time, everything you encounter makes you stronger, better, richer, and kinder. And that becomes that brand of who you are that you can take to a company.
Thank you, guys. And thank you, Sandra, for that amazing question. That definitely touched upon all of our panelists' expertise. I have another question here that I believe will also do the same. How do I deal with a gap in level of professional employment? I've been underemployed for a number of years, largely due to the quite limited employment market in the small town I moved to following the last recession. Aiming to return to the Bay Area at the mid-manager level. Challenge to land work currently at the higher level.
Pandemic, man, you can work anywhere you want. Go for jobs in other geographies. Don't let that limit you.
I know I replied directly, I think. I'm not
Yes.
sure if everyone saw the response or not, but just speaking from a recruiter's perspective, not many companies will quote unquote promote you when you apply for a new role. I would say 95% of the time it's a quote unquote lateral move. You'll still get like a 20 to 30% even more pay increase when you move, but most companies will continue to pay you or hire you at the level in which you are at. Now, if you are quote unquote underleveled, which can definitely be frustrating, I totally understand. But if you truly are underleveled, if you do join a company with a fair, fair promotion process, most of the time I've seen it work out. I've hired 8 really high performers who I felt were underleveled, and then in 1 year at my company, they were all rightfully promoted. So I do think that there is merit to it. It's not always a one and done situation.
Awesome.
Also, I've heard time and time again that a lot of companies don't promote you. If you feel like you've been passed over for promotion, leave. And the best way to get a salary increase is go to a different company. And so you do get penalized if you're with the company for a long time. And in fact, if you've been with a company for too long, it could become a liability unless you've been promoted within the company.
Or move around. That's what other folks like to see. Like you can stay at like a GE or an Intel or a Amazon your entire career, but as long as you're switching teams, different, getting different product area focuses, different geographies, international experience, etc., that's just as good as if you were to have left and switched and got other experience.
Thank you for that. I hope that answered your question here. My goodness, we're popping up again with the chat here. And I have another question here, and it just really caught my eye because I know a lot of people want the easy answer to this one. And Pat, I really appreciate you putting it into the chat here. And I know this is like a solve world hunger type of question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. How to counter age discrimination? I know that is like the broadest of questions, and I'm just going to ask you, our panelists here, just to tackle it as they would and to go as in depth as they want. So, how to counter age discrimination? Whoever can take the floor. Oscar, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I mean, it's out there. It's definitely there, and it's been there, folks. One of the things to remember, okay, some of us 30 years ago were young HR folks, recruiters, and we passed over some of those baby boomers, and they were old then, and now we're at that age, and now that young generation is doing it to us. I don't agree with it, but I just want to put this in perspective, okay? Next, to answer the question, okay? I have come to realize, when I worked in the tech industry, I worked for 12 years for various startups. And I realized that after a number of years, I was reaching the top of my pay scale for the type of work that I was doing, that they could hire a younger person, pay them half of what they were paying me, and he or she could probably do just as good, if not even a better job than I was. And I realized that every position out there has what I call a shelf life. Just like in professional sports, you don't see a 50-year-old professional Michael Jordan out there. We don't, okay? And some positions out there, some industries have a longer shelf life, others have a shorter shelf life. And so what I've learned to do is, because until some laws get passed, or there are laws, but until something gets done more about age discrimination, I can only control what I can control. And that is to learn new skills, transfer those skills, take the advice that Cory's giving, that Sue's giving on how to manage my career and apply it. You know what I found in the last, as I've been working for myself now, in the last 5.5 years, not once has any of my clients said, Oscar, you know what? You're too expensive. You're too old for this. No, actually what they look at, they're like, wow, we're getting a good deal with you, Oscar, because you have a lot of experience. Let me tell you what, it's interesting how, the way we've positioned ourselves and the way the perception is that I am at an almost 52-year-old, okay? And I'm going to live to 150. I'm going to say the same thing at 150 because I'm going to constantly be learning here. But it's at 150, I'm like wine. The older I get, the better I get.
I like to chime in on that too. And discrimination of every single flavor exists. People who are coming fresh out of college are discriminated against. People who are dealing with, political, religious, ethnic backgrounds. Everybody has some degree of prejudice that you have to contend with. And where you really have that ability and that responsibility to do an end run around it is to make those contacts where people will vouch for you, where you can go around the system. You want to get out of the ATS system. You want to go, and again, love you, Cory, but you want to go around the recruiters. You need to be able to go. That's where LinkedIn is so powerful. That's where the relationships that you have are so powerful. And the other thing too, and I can tell you that, I've had my consulting practice for a long time, and I've been able to pick and choose the people I want to work with. And I have a philosophy of no turkeys. When you worked on I worked on the corporate side or on the ad agency side, I had some clients who were real turkeys, but I had to deal with them nicely because, they were the client. And so you can be a free agent. Do consider consulting work. And I hate the word contracting because that's someone who lays down cement, and that's perfectly honorable work. But we are brain and strategy providers. And so it's definitely consulting, no matter what purchasing wants to call it sometimes. But consider that, because there is no age limit for that. And I know a lot of people post on the kit list for consulting work, that the age is not an issue. They want to know, can you do this? Can you rock it? Can you make them look good? Because basically people are trying to solve a problem, and they want to make sure that whomever they have is going to make them look good and solve the problem with the least amount of headaches. And that's where your expertise is going to be the way to do it. You do have to work against some of the misperception that people who are more senior in their roles are too expensive or feel kind of entitled. That entitlement phrase has been, bandied about for, millennials and Zs and Xers, but really, baby boomers have also been considered entitled, saying, why I did that 20 years ago, or that's beneath me. Just be fresh, open, and authentic, and really work that personal network in a way that you're giving in that network and also asking what you need. And you can do an end run around that.
And then I guess if you're looking for something a little more tactical around fighting age bias, you can get relatively creative with your resume, actually.
Yeah.
I would say you only need to put 10 years at most of the most recent work experience that you have. You don't always have to list every single company you've worked for and all of the different years that you've been there.
Thank you for that, Cory. I know there were some people who also had questions. Real quick, I want to actually, that have to do with how far back to put on their resume. Real quick, Cory, this is kind of a little bit of a tangent, but I know there was someone who had a question regarding, let me see if I can remember on the top of my head. How far back should a person go on their resume if it is relevant to the job that they're applying?
Yeah, so that's a
Yeah.
tricky one.
Yeah.
It's going to be dependent, and in your case, I would work with a career coach or a resume coach, because there's different approaches and there's pros and cons to each, and so I would test different versions of your resume. But in general, without knowing how long you've been working, et cetera, I would say you would go only as far back as those jobs are that are directly relevant. And then you would leverage your summary and skills section to highlight your transferable skills. Now, keep in mind though, if your relevant job is from like 10 or 15 years ago, unfortunately, it's not relevant anymore. You may think it's relevant, but I mean, like I couldn't tell you what I ate for breakfast 15 years ago. And so if you're going to pay me to tell you what I ate for breakfast 15 years ago, I don't think I could do that. So you're also going to need to balance the expectations of, what type of career transition you can make depending on how far away those relevant skill sets are. And then I know someone messaged me privately, but I can't respond to you because your username is iPhone. But I think it's a very good question. Um, can you please provide some specific suggestions on how, for example, someone can transition out of the tech industry to other industries or other professions?
Yes.
Are there any good success cases, say a senior tech executive building a new career in finance, real estate, et cetera, et cetera? Absolutely.
Cory, I think you're hacking my computer because that was the very next question I was going to get to. So yes, please
I can
go
I can
ahead.
read your mind. I can read your mind. And I would love to hear Sue and Oscar's opinion on this too. But yes, there's countless examples of people that I've worked with that have transitioned out of tech. A lot of people actually get into tech for all the wrong reasons. A lot of people get into it because it's hot and sexy and pays the most, etc. And it's usually not fulfilling for a lot of people. Luckily, transitioning out of tech into other industries like nonprofit and things like that, I've seen generally have been quite easy. The transition to go the other way has been a bit of a barrier for folks, unfortunately. But some things I've seen, it also depends on the barrier to entry level. So, for example, right, to become a real estate agent, you just have to take an exam and pass, and then anybody can be a real estate agent. Not to say that it's easy. You still have to study, and working in real estate is hard. It's very, very hard. I have two friends that do it. They work 7 days a week. It's a pure sales role. You got to hustle. But there are certain jobs with very low, quote unquote, barriers to entry. Recruiting, for example, is another profession that has very low barriers to entry. So depending on the job you want, it can be very easy. I've seen folks in sales, for example, go into like product management and become product managers. I've seen them go into finance. I've seen folks in finance go to marketing. I've actually seen that transition a lot. Accounting and finance to marketing. I don't know why, but people love marketing if you come in accounting and finance backgrounds. Marketing to HR. I've seen quite a lot.
I transitioned from tech to nonprofit chamber of commerce because chambers of commerce are technically nonprofits, and I did some of the things that Cory and Sue have recommended prior to the transition. One it was I really learned how to focus my resume, my cover letter on the transferable skills. I really understood the needs of the chamber to be able to tell that story. I also reached out to a lot of the local people to really understand the community and build those relationships so that they could be an advocate on my behalf. Also, prior, and not that this wasn't my plan, but I look back and I'm like, oh yeah, there's that tool, there's that skill set. But I helped co-found a nonprofit with family and friends that was totally volunteer based prior to making that career transition. I was still working in tech. So that experience of starting a nonprofit and the relationships later, I was able to leverage that in transitioning into the chamber. And I actually beat out my competition who had 25 years of chamber experience. She was the interim chamber CEO and the board loved her. Like I have a better chance of winning the lottery tonight, Wednesday, than having gotten that position, and I got it. And after 7 years of working at the chamber, I transitioned out of the chamber. That's when I went to go work at LinkedIn.
You're like a chameleon. You just, you shift yourself into whatever situation you end up in. Sue, I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
All I just wanted to say is if you see an area you want to get into, start swimming in that pond. Start reading, the press about it. Start finding who's who are the shakers, what are the issues, and so that you can talk to the things so that people know that what you're taking with you is your skill set, but then also your knowledge of what their issues are. I did transition to biotech. I still do tech clients as well. But I basically just started getting really smart. I know what mRNA is now with the vaccine and what it's doing. but I built the friendships, I built credibility. I actually did best practices seminars to biotech companies where, you know, their marketing people were all PhDs and absolutely brilliant in their own scientific backgrounds, but they didn't know anything about marketing. So I was brought in to teach them kind of from soup to nuts on, you know, all the best practices about various aspects of marketing. And that led to another one, another client, another client, another client. So start, you know, jump into that pond, you know, that lake, and understand the issues, the industries. And right now it is so easy with everything available on Google. You can go so deep on a company's website. You can follow their leadership. You can find out what shows they're in. You can actually even attend some of the shows and conferences, sign up for webinars. Just get immersed in it and you'll make that transition.
Awesome. Thank you. I know we are getting very close to 8:30. So anyone whose question has not been answered, who has a question, who's shy and has been waiting for the last 10 minutes to write a question, do it now, before we kind of get to the end here. And we have another question here, and I love this question because I think it's very important. What is the best way to network virtually? I know you guys already kind of mentioned something, Clubhouse, but why don't you kind of give us your insight?
I'll give you some tips.
Cool places to hang.
So I'll give you some tips. So first of all, folks, you all knew that who the speakers were for tonight, who was going to be on the panel. It blows my mind how very few of you sent, at least to me. I don't know, maybe Sue, maybe, you know, Sue's, you know, way better looking, and Cory is, you know, Mr. Gamer over here with his background, okay? I don't know, okay? Maybe they got the invitation to connect on LinkedIn, but it just blows my mind how we don't think of networking with speakers, because you could have very easily sent me an invitation to connect and say, hey, Oscar, I see you're going to be speaking. I look forward to hearing from you. Something simple like that. That's one. Number two, folks, the way this webinar is set up, you can see if you do gallery view or whatever the heck Zoom calls the view, you can see all, you know, the squares, everyone. Take a screenshot of that and then go to LinkedIn and say, hi, John Doe. I noticed you were on that webinar with that, you know, extra caffeinated OG Oscar Garcia. Can we connect on LinkedIn? Do that, folks. There's a form that Angelica has sent out earlier, okay? Fill out your information there. There's many other ways, okay? But this is how you can connect virtually. You know, can I tell you something? This is the first time I'm seeing Cory's face. He and I have had probably 6 or 7 Zoom calls, and I have never seen his face until today. But I'm going to tell you something. I know more about Cory, and I feel more of a deeper connection to Cory than some of my own relatives. That's the power of knowing how to build relationship, folks. It doesn't matter if it's online. It's just human connection and being respectful and adding value to other people.
And before everyone joined, Oscar was like, gosh, Cory, you're way more handsome than I thought you were going to be.
That's right.
And then I know that there was a lot of folks in the chat asking about the salary question. I would love to hear Oscar and Sue's answer. I gave it my best shot. I don't know what you guys have had for advice.
Let me see
missed
if
that.
yeah.
The question.
Salary question. Salary to enter online app, question mark.
Yeah, so
And
basically what they were saying earlier is sometimes for some companies, when you apply online, they ask you to put in your salary expectations as a part of a questionnaire. You can't skip the question and you can't put like NA or like discuss later. You have to put an actual number. So they were saying, what number should you put in?
Sue, do you want?
You know, I really don't have an answer for that one because that ticks me off. I thought they're not allowed to ask that anymore. I thought that's illegal.
No, they can ask you for your expectations. They cannot ask you for your current compensation.
Okay. And then you can't put a range in the question? I mean, in the answer?
I'm not sure if you can put a range.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the thing. You know, that's where you want to go into and kind of ask around to find out what the fair market value is for what you're doing, because you might be underpaid or overpaid where you're at. And then just you want to, when you're changing jobs, you want to make more money. We're not doing this just to make the world better. We've got to pay our bills. We've got families to take care of. So I would just do some research, call some friends and say, and it really helps to treat recruiters well. I was not looking for jobs, most of my career, but I get a lot of calls from recruiters and I took good care of them. If I wasn't looking for that or wasn't for that job, I'd recommend somebody else. And in the meantime, I'd ask them and say, oh, could you tell me what the salary range is for that? And I kept a matrix, and I saved it, I shared it with other people so you could see what the range is for different types of jobs. But there are much better tools out there now to find out what the basic range is and go a little high. I think if you shoot too low, I think then you're kind of locked in. But if you just go a little bit higher than your comfort level, then that's a company that you're going to be kind of playing in the right ballpark. And if you get weeded out at that point, then they're a price-driven type deal, then I wouldn't do it. So I'm not a great person on salary negotiations because I've been on my own for so long. But the same thing happens when you're putting together a proposal. Especially women, we tend to kind of, keep cutting or undervalue. And I want to tell people, like, you have to be bold, because the only time to really make enough of a change in your salary is when you change jobs. And I just know that as other people who have businesses, they say always ask for more in the proposal. Go past your comfort level, and they can always come back and ask you to cut it down. But if you cut yourself down first, you're stuck.
Folks, I don't play that game with companies. Let me give you an analogy here. So let's say I was dating someone, first date, and the first question is, Oscar, show me your bank account. Or what if I asked that person, hey, show me your bank account? You know what I would say? I'm like, beat it. Okay? Because right there, it's telling me where the foundation of where this relationship is and what is important. We don't have the values that match each other. We don't. And see, the thing really, folks, in my opinion, is all of us, when we ask these questions, I want you to think, do I respect myself? Do I value myself? That if I'm asked this question or I'm turned down to this opportunity, that I'm okay. Because guess what? I'm, like I mentioned earlier, my values, personal values, with the company culture or the values of the company need to match. I've been in situations where I took a job, I didn't follow my own advice. 6 weeks later, I left that opportunity. And then there's been opportunities, jobs where I literally could work for free because I'm so freaking excited and happy and love the team, love the work, like the impact that the company I'm making and the world out there. So folks, like when you ask some of these questions, are you valuing yourself? Because if you truly value yourself, then you're not going to put up with some of this BS stuff that these companies ask. And it's really some of these people in HR.
That's why if you go around these systems, if you get to the hiring manager, and also most of the jobs that are available are never going to show up on the boards. It's really that people know about something in their group and they'll let you know. So that's why you have to let people know you're looking and that you're interested in their company, and they can keep an eye out and just go around that whole system. And I think another thing that's really important too is Oscar said, be willing to walk away. I know one of the companies I was negotiating with, and when I was working on the corporate side, and I remember just talking, and I said, well, is that your best offer? And this guy was tough as nails. He's like, no. So it's like, and I think if you just show your value, stay calm, and also be willing to work with them. Don't be entitled about it, but just say, hey, I would love this job. However, I'm looking for fair market value for what I'm going to be bringing to the company, because I will do this, this, and this in terms of value. And I think that helps people to understand that what they want are the results, and it's not necessarily the price. And if you sell yourself short, then you're going to have to leave to get an increase in pay, because increases in pay are just really, for most companies, rather small. The other thing is, if you're getting that much of a runaround in a system, it's not the right size company for you. And one of the things I really want to tell everybody is, make sure you really know how to rock that online interview. That's really going to be key, because it's moved that way because of COVID, but I think it's here to stay. And we had a conversation earlier today too about, get the right lighting, get a ring light, get a good camera, make sure you're showing your whole body and not just the top of your head. Practice with friends. The more you practice, you get better at it. We're not probably going to have as much of the luxury of an in-person interview that we used to have, where a lot of those body language and that personal connection and the prompts are not there. So you're going to need to learn how to communicate well over video, and look at it as another fun challenge just to tackle and have some, great play with it.
I did just want to say, Alex, thank you so much for your honesty and putting it in the chat. He said, or she said, the hardest part of this process is keeping my spirits up. Thank you all for the information tonight, even more for the good cheer. And one thing I just want to say is, it can be very difficult to go through the job search process if you aren't getting calls back or you get rejected after doing interviews. But one thing to keep in mind is, as long as you're making progress, even if you're not getting a job, but you're making progress, like if you're getting an opportunity to interview, or you made it to the final rounds and you've never made it to final rounds before, I would celebrate those wins, because those are accomplishments in itself. And even to be given an opportunity to speak to a recruiter, there's a lot of people who are applying and looking for jobs who aren't even getting calls back. So I think really enjoying and thriving in those moments will help lift your spirits up. And also, you can take learning opportunities from every single one of these. As you get farther and farther in the process, make sure you're taking notes, write down all the questions you've been asked, because more than likely, if you get invited to interview for another job, they're going to be either the exact same questions or very, very similar. And you may not know what you didn't do well because they don't give feedback, but that some of your answers could be better, because if you gave perfect answers the first time, they would have hired you. So take those questions, practice, and improve on your answers. And I would say celebrate the wins. And the other thing too is, if you're applying for a bunch of different jobs, pay attention to the ones that actually call you back the most, because that's what the market believes your skill set is, and that's where they believe you're best fit. And so I would also really start to get a little bit more specific in your job search as well, and then you won't feel so defeated all the time if you're shotgunning your resume to 200 companies every single week and only 5 call you back. Maybe there's a reason for that as well.
One of the things I also would recommend is get a success buddy or two. Having Kelly, who's my sister and co-moderator for the Kit List, I mean, she's hearing me, from the days I'm singing joy, joy, joy to the days I'm really in the dumps and just feeling like, I have to do this again. And so it really is important to have someone who's going to help be an objective person to tell you the truth when you need to hear it, and then also to encourage you. And I think, I know that with my own business, I've had different success teams where we get together and, now you can do it online, but we used to do in person, and we talk about, our long-term goals, short-term goals, whatever we're working on. And also know that I even hear from recruiter groups saying, hey, I went all the way through down the line, did, 3-4 rounds of interviews, and then crickets. I didn't hear anything. And here I am, a recruiter applying for a recruiter job. You'd think that as a professional courtesy, one recruiter to another, that they get back to you. And all I can say is, don't be upset by crickets. Recruiters, and Cory can attest to this, are under the gun now more than ever. It's purely a numbers thing, and they've got to get butts on seats really fast. And so just don't take it personally, even, and it's hard. And it's also knowing, like, follow up and, try to have that follow up that doesn't sound like you're, stalking them either. But sometimes a job, the rec gets pulled and you won't know about it. Sometimes they had an internal candidate all along and they were just going through the motions. There's no way to know that. So don't really try hard not to take it personally. And you're never going to hear from them the real reason why they didn't hire you. You won't, because they can't legally tell you. And also, really, would you want to know? Because whatever doesn't work for one company might be the exact reason why they want to hire you in another company. But don't do it alone. Try to get a support system of a friend, family member, or another job seeker. And I know a group that would get together in Palo Alto, and all these different job seekers would go in there and help each other. And, it was just a nice, over kind of breakfast kind of thing. And I think it's a really smart idea. So don't do it alone, because it does get discouraging. But also, in the words of, I love this, Winston Churchill, I love this, his shortest and my most favorite speech, but he's like, he got up in front of, I think it was Cambridge, or, one of the big universities for a graduation ceremony as the sole speaker. And he went up and he said, never, 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 never give up. So don't give up. Really, you never know when success is right around the corner. And if you're doing the right thing by reaching out to your network and being a good person, sometimes you're going to be remarkably surprised that that right job will come to you.
Sue, I'm saving that as my alarm for every morning, exactly in that.
Never.
Never.
I've
Yes.
never seen a cigar. Big cigar.
Yes.
Never give up.
That'll also be in the email with the recording. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. I know you guys, we've gone 4 minutes over, and I want to be respectful of your time. I know some of you guys have to change diapers. You have to eat yourselves, or you just, you need to go to sleep eventually. Enjoy the Netflix, whatever it is. So I want to thank our panelists today. Thank you so much. I know there has been so many great comments thanking you guys for your wisdom. Thanking you guys for cheering them up, for keeping them motivated. So I really, really want to emphasize just how, go ahead.
I just realized one of the things I wanted to say, Cory and Oscar have amazing content. And there's a link that's in what, and Helica is going to be sending out. And also I did some TV shows about, a few years back, but they have really, really great advice from the experts. And we actually just did some coronavirus videos with my sister, mostly just to get the experts, like what's going on. So use these, find out, tips on how to interview online. Cory's got amazing stuff on YouTube. Oscar's got amazing stuff. Just go and just, instead of watching Netflix, spend, 15 minutes just learning something about the job search. You'll get a new idea, and that idea might be the thing that lands you that perfect job.
That's right. Yes. Thank you, Cory. Thank you, Sue. Angelica, you did a fabulous job. And everyone that joined us, thank you so much. Connect with us. We really are, enjoy, all three of us, we have in common, really do enjoy helping people. There's a lot of great tips and information out there. So thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Thank you everyone for tuning in, and thank you, Angelica, for being an awesome host. I could feel your energy even though you're like 50 miles away. And thank you so much. And Oscar, Sue, it was a pleasure working with you and setting up everything. The amount of time and preparation I think that Sue and Oscar have put into to make this event really, really thorough and valuable for everyone is fantastic. So huge shout out to Oscar and Sue. Thank you everyone.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you guys.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Have a safe and healthy night. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank